Hey there, super friends. It's Joey with Last Point Gaming. Today is Thursday, March 21st, 2019. There was supposed to be an episode yesterday, and I did record one. But it was bad. Like super bad. I couldn't stay focused on, I forgot that I had a topic. It's weird. So, we're trying again here. We have cycled back around, and it's time for everybody's favorite content topic. Let's talk about women in the gaming arena. Again, because, apparently we need to keep talking about this. So, previously, I was definitely on the wrong side of the... Oh my god, just go, you're turning right, go. Previously, I was on the wrong side of the is sexism an issue in the gaming arena discussion. So, this was 2 years ago. And, I had made comments that I didn't feel that sexism in the gaming arena was as big a deal as people made it out to be, and yada yada. And no, I was definitely on the wrong side of that one. And not to excuse it, but to kind of explain where my perspective was that led me to believe this was justified. One, I was mostly considering my local community. And my local community is great. We don't really tolerate a whole lot of discrimination. Or any, really. I mean, if you're gonna, trash talk and that, you want to do the whole banter table talk thing and everything, as long as the other participant is cool with it, and that's how, you know how it is when you're around your buddies. You're like, oh, I'm just gonna stomp you into the ground. I'm coming for you. Get good, noob. People you're acquainted with and have reason to believe that this is an acceptable way to interact with them, and they seem okay with it. But if, it's really easy to get Boo fired up because she's young. And she, thrives on attention. And so if you start that kind of friendly trash talking with her, she's gonna, go at it. She's gonna give as good as she gets. And if you have a problem with that, then perhaps you shouldn't get her fired up. She's not the best at judging mood. So, we have had this circumstance happen where somebody who thought it was fun to get her fired up, gets her fired up, and, they're taking their shots at each other and everything, all in good fun and whatever. Well, he goes on a losing bend. And, he's getting pissier and pissier because he's losing. And, she happens to run into him, makes some kind of wisecrack and blows up about it. Well, an hour ago, you were participating in this. So, I don't think you should interact with random people that way. I think there needs to be a building of an acquaintanceship there and saying, oh, okay, it's cool that we talk to each other like this. I don't think you can base it on how they interact with other people. There are guys I'm pretty tight with at the shop that, we'll get into it, whatever. That doesn't mean that I'm okay with, some random person coming up and talking to me like that. I don't know you. Yeah, and it's kind of, you see it a lot on Twitter, and I have definitely been guilty of this on Twitter, the over-familiar jokes, like, that are meant to be light and playful jabs, but you don't know that person from a fucking stop sign, they don't know you, and they're like, are you being a douche here? And you're like, oh, no, it was a joke, I'm sorry. And then there's times where you're not even actually taking a jab, you're asking a legitimate question, and you ask somebody that you interact with fairly frequently on Twitter, so you think this will be okay, forgetting to untag Johnny fucking Magic, who just lost the Storm matchup to Burn. He was on Storm, played against Burn, and got taken down. I didn't realize Burn was a bad match for Storm. I really didn't. Because Burn is generally regarded as the least common denominator for a semi-competitive Modern deck. What the hell is that sound? Oh, that can't be good. Okay. Anyway, Burn is generally regarded as the least common denominator for a kind of competitive Modern deck. It's not generally regarded as tier 1. It's kind of the starter Modern deck, because it's one of the cheaper decks to build, but is relatively efficient, and you can pick up a certain amount of wins because you draw what you need and your opponent doesn't. You will pick up a certain amount of losses because you have your opponent at 3 life and need a lightning bolt and can't find one. It's the nature of Burn. So I didn't realize this was a bad matchup for Storm. Caleb Shear had, because this was the one Pro Tour, I think the last Modern Pro Tour they did. And he's like, oh, it's so cool to see John Finkel, and he tagged him, playing my favorite deck. And I was like, wow, is Burn like a bad matchup for Storm? Because, you see that John Finkel lost to Burn, and you're like, what is that, like? That seems odd. And John Finkel very succinctly replied, yes, with a period. And the period is what tells you that I probably irritated him. It wasn't meant to be, but anyway, that's all neither here nor there. So, yeah, the whole being over familiar with people, it kind of online, yeah, whatever. I don't care. But like in person, especially like with touching, they're like Rockstar. When we see him, he gives me a hug, he gives Boo a hug. Everybody's happy. When he leaves, he gives us both a hug. I don't want somebody seeing that and assuming, this person that I've never met before, that it's okay to touch me. Nope. No, we really got to work up to that. But, I'm pretty tight with Rockstar. So, as far as the sexism not happening in the gaming community, no, I had not seen very much of it at that point. Now, it did later come to my attention that I've become kind of blind to it because of how little I care about people being not friendly. But on the other side of that, my community is great. And yeah, I'd had positive experiences at the few larger tournaments I've gone to. The other side of that is I've been hanging around the gaming community for, like 20 years now. Holy shit. I have been playing Magic for over 20 years. I started in 97, 98, whenever Portal came out. So, I've been around for a bit. And back in the times where it was not considered socially acceptable to be a nerd or a gamer, it was particularly brutal being a woman in the gaming arena because the non-gamers didn't like you because you were a nerd and that wasn't cool. And being in the extreme minority, Reactions from the male gamers were, by and large, mostly okay. With those few exceptions. But those few exceptions were pretty aggressive and awful. Because we didn't really seem to have the awareness then that we do now. So, me now looking at the arena says, I don't know, man. Seems a lot better. But better doesn't mean good. Doesn't mean fixed. So I'll admit I was on the wrong side of that one. I take ownership of that. But as far as my stance that has always been that, oh my god, this is awful. It's raining, but it's not even blinding rain. Why is everybody driving like a freaking idiot? Anyway, I mean, me personally, and I don't get to speak for all the women in the gaming arena by any means. I don't represent anybody but me. But I do just want to be treated like all the other players. I don't want to be treated different because I'm a woman. And I think ultimately that's actually what I would say probably a majority of the non-male players want. But when you say that, people get really defensive about it because it's kind of this concept that brute, kind of asshole behavior should be tolerated if the women folk aren't around. And that's just really not the case. If you go through the JAR and the IPG, there are sections that deal specifically with unsporting conduct. There is a behavioral expectation to partake in organized play events. So when it comes to who belongs at the table and who doesn't, the first and foremost, easiest deciding factor is who's following the rules and who's not. So if you're engaging in this gatekeeping behavior and telling the person across the table for whatever reason that they don't belong there, you are the one in the wrong. So this whole concept of be extra nice to the female players or the non-male players, that's one, in my experience, a lot of gamers have a hard time accomplishing the extra nice without coming across as extra super special creepy. And yeah, the more time you spend in the gaming arena and around, because, or let's just be completely honest here, a lot of people in tabletop gaming are kind of awkward. So you spend enough time, you start to realize that, oh no, they just don't understand that, that's actually kind of off-putting. And usually, a lot of them, you can explain why it's off-putting and they'll understand. But again, when we take this view that using the word rape to describe a particularly one-sided match and say, well, we shouldn't do that because women. No, we shouldn't do that because that's not what that word means. And it is a particularly vile word that can bring up a lot of feelings of trauma and pain and terror, honestly. But it can bring up those feelings to anybody. And while, yes, it is statistically more likely to happen to women, men can be assaulted too, So to continue to push the idea that, well, that word is only upsetting to women, you're really trivializing men who have been victims of that type of crime. And you just make it harder for somebody to say, like, look, yeah, I may be male, but that word still bothers me. Like, I wish you wouldn't use it that way. And I've been hit with the, oh, you want to be treated like all the other players, so you want to sit across from the table from somebody telling you why you don't belong. No, but nobody should have to endure that, regardless of any of your demographics. Because again, people who can follow the rules belong there. People who can't, don't. That's pretty much the metric. So to say, yeah, I don't think female players or non-male players need special treatment unless, they have a special need that requires a different accommodation than, the typical player. I'm not saying that it should be okay to talk to people like that. I'm not saying it should be okay to make comments on a non-male player's appearance, but I don't think it's okay to make nasty comments about a male player's appearance, be it, negative or that kind of creepy. Like, I've in the past mentioned players that I feel dress particularly well, or always seem to look put together. But I'm generally very careful in the language I use because I don't want to come across as like the creepy, weird thing. Oh wow, this one's really kind of going off center here. So again, when I say like really non-male players should get to be treated like everybody else, I'm not saying that in a negative connotation like, oh God, people need to stop asking for special treatment. But we need to observe that this code of conduct should be being enforced universally. And if it's not, that's what the problem is. Not that the women showed up and require a kinder, gentler environment. No, there is a code of conduct and it should be followed, regardless of who you are interacting with. But like MTG Nerd Girl, this is what spawned all of this. She shared a screenshot of a comment on a post she was involved with, basically telling her that she wouldn't be doing what she's doing if she wasn't a pretty woman. Because if she was a male player, it would just be like, oh, you're, like all the other players. But no, you come in and you play a guy's game to get attention. Look, I'm married. I have all the male attention I can take. I don't play this game for any kind of non-platonic interaction. Yeah, I've talked about before how I pursued F&M despite going like 0-4 every week for 2-3 years, because for 4 hours a week people had to interact with me. Got me out of the house. I got to interact with other quote-unquote adults. And, got to go be involved in a social setting that I felt comfortable with. It has rules. It has a structure. But that's not for, in particular, male attention. No, I could have just as easily joined a knitting group, I suppose, except I have very little patience for knitting. And yeah, it's a horrible thing to say to her, and there was a guy in her Twitter thread on this thing, and you could tell he was trying to be supportive while trying to be very middle line, and I'm one of those kind of middle line people. I think there is a point where we go too far with, yeah, I'm all about not stepping on your toes, but if you stick them under my foot as I'm taking a step, there's not much I can do. There does come a point where it's like, okay, that's that's excessive, in my opinion. You know, like, somebody had made a comment about not wanting judges to be friendly in their interaction because they find that off-putting. I'm like, okay, well, I think you're saying this really just for the excuse that, like, people should be impolite in the gaming arena. Like, I don't think you actually feel this way. I think you're just saying this to justify your own bad behavior. And I'm trying to respect your viewpoint here, but I think it's invalid. But yeah, he's like, you know, oh, I'm so sorry you have to endure that, but I mean, he does kind of have a point. No, he doesn't. Because if you took that comment and instead of applying it to a woman, applied it to a non-white male, like, if you were to say that Paul Cheon wouldn't have the standing he does, you know, as far as one of the commentary members, if he was Caucasian, if you look at that and say, wow, that's a really shitty thing to say, applying this same metric of a random demographic to somebody and saying, I mean, it's understandable, but, you know, it's still wrong to, like, say it. No. I watched Taryn stream pretty much every day that Taryn was streaming. During the, like, super skippy Twitch streamer event, I was mostly in Taryn's stream, despite having many other streamers that I support, and, you know, Todd Anderson and Brad Nelson were, you know, streaming at the same time. The bulk of my view went to Taryn because he was the smallest, you know, view-wise. So he needed the support the most. Taryn was not a pro player. Like, in fact, it was frequently kind of a thing we joked about during his stream. You know, like, he had a punt counter and shit. And it was a good old time. He's like, oh, yeah, that's right, I'm not a pro. Like, but he was a likable streamer. He had a great personality. He has since stopped streaming, which is why I'm referring to this in the past tense. He still has a great personality. He's a great guy. He does graphic design. So if you are ever looking for somebody to do such work for you, I recommend you hit him up. But his stream was enjoyable to watch despite him not being like the best of the best and a well-known name in the tournament circuit. So to say, like, oh, you wouldn't have a following if you weren't a woman. Are there some amount of followers that follow her because of that? I'm sure there are. Just because that's the nature of things. I'm sure there are other streamers. Like, one of the reasons I tune into Shannon Grace's stream when he streams is because I know he knows ASL, American Sign Language. And I find that fascinating. There are, like, all sorts of random things that make me go, yeah, I'm going to hang out in this person's stream. Other than, oh, yeah, they're a really top-end player and I can learn a lot from them. Amy the Amazonian, oh my god. So, I of course follow Brad Nelson. I hang out in his stream a lot. He rated her, I don't know, I want to say it was like 2 weeks back when he was cutting off his stream. And, god, she is fucking funny. I want her to be my BFF. Like, from her, like, just amazingly punny deck names. One of my favorites being Smackdose, which was, of course, a Rakdos deck. To, like, just her brand of humor is hilarious to me. I think she's great. So I've been tuning into her stream pretty much every day. And yeah, she was prepping for the Mythic Invitational. I'm sure she'll continue to prep. She has submitted her deck lists at this point. And, you know, the last week or so that I've been tuning into her stream, it was all identifying what decks was she going to submit. And that's great. She's playing in the Mythic Invitational and everything. But honestly, I would have tuned into the stream even if she wasn't, because she's fucking hilarious. I think she's great. I tune into Travis Sauer's stream. I don't know his name from tournament coverage. I went on Twitch one day. None of my streamers were on. I saw Vance, because him and I are friends on Twitch, was in Travis's stream, and I'm like, oh, we'll go check this out. And I was like, oh, I like it here. This place is kind of cool. Same with Lord Tupperware. I don't know that guy's actual name, because he can't really be Lord Tupperware. I don't know who these people are. They're not like, it's not like I'm watching Jerry Thompson stream that, like, I know that name. I know his face. I know him. Well, I mean, I don't know him personally, but, like, I know of him. I tune into streams that amuse me. So to tell her that, you know, you're only getting this pass because you're a woman is fucking bullshit. And as a woman in the IT industry, yeah, that shit really pisses me off. And yeah, I used to be pissed off at affirmative action for that. Like, if affirmative action wasn't a thing, it wouldn't be assumed immediately that I might be an affirmative action hire. But it's not affirmative action's fault. It's just the viewpoint people have. You know, that they see me and they're like, oh, so you're a designer. No, I'm a full stack developer, actually, but thanks. You know, I'm an engineer. I build shit. So again, when I say I think non-male players should be treated the same as any other player, I'm not saying that, well, they need to just suck it up and accept the bad behavior. No, the bad behavior on the whole needs to stop. So that's where that's at. Again, it's everybody's favorite topic, but I enjoy MTG Nerd Girl. I don't actually know if she streams or anything. I follow her on Twitter, and I find her brand of humor on Twitter pretty amusing. Which is why this whole thing came up. And more than the initial comment, because again, I've said this before, when you write these articles, like that article Fournier wrote, where you're focusing on like the super overt bad behavior of like inappropriate touching, inappropriate comments, distinctive leering, you're not reaching anybody who engages in those behaviors, because they don't get that it's wrong. And the people who do get that it's wrong, they already think it's wrong. What really more needs to be pointed out is Thea had written an article, I think for TCG Player, I want to say that's where it was, about, you know, the microaggressions. Things that people who want to be an ally to underrepresented demographics in the community maybe aren't aware of and would like to be aware of, because they do want to be that positive force. So more so than, you know, the dipshit that was involved in this comment thread telling her basically she was worthless, but, you know, because she has a female figure, that's why she gets to do what she does, is this guy in the Twitter thread telling her that, like, oh yeah, it really sucks that you have to deal with this, and basically implying, you know, it's okay to think things like that, but you really shouldn't say it. No, the fact that you think things like that means you're part of the problem, really. But that's where I stand on it. As always, as always, if you made it this far with me, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully I'll talk to y'all tomorrow.